Most property professionals don't run out of content ideas because they're not creative. They just don't have a system that harvests content from their day-to-day life. After producing thousands of pieces of content for property professionals here in New Zealand, we've noticed the same things happening over and over again. I'm Cal from Spotlight, and today we're going to build you a framework that means you never run out of content ideas ever again. I'm going to assume at the moment when it comes to posts, you're trying to film, write, edit, and publish all at the same time. You're trying to come up with ideas, trying to work out what's going to work, do a little bit of market research at the same time. And the problem is if you sit there looking at a blank phone or a blank screen and you're trying to come up with ideas, is you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and pressure and creativity don't go hand in hand. If you're anything like me, before I implemented this framework, what would happen is I'd open up Instagram, stare at a blank phone, blank page, trying to post a reel or a photo or a carousel, or not really sure what I'm gonna post at all. And I'd end up just pressuring myself into creating something. The problem is when that happens is we're not creating content that is of value for our audience, and more to the point, is never gonna be on brand or of quality. Especially if we're trying to write, film, edit, publish all within an hour, it's never going to work. So one of the things we need to change before we implement this framework is changing our mindset towards creating content. And what this looks like is asking yourself a question. What happened in my work this week that somebody else would find useful, interesting, reassuring, or relatable? Content should be collected before it is created, because inspiration is unreliable, but observation can become a really great habit. You do not need to sit in a room and invent content. Instead, you just need to notice the content that is happening around you. Where I'm getting at is you shouldn't be sitting in a room trying to invent content. Instead, you should make it a habit to notice when content is happening all around you on your day-to-day life. There are 4 key places where content ideas come from. Most useful property content can be traced back to 4 key things: questions, problems, decisions, and observations. Number 1, questions. Every question that a client asks you could be a potential piece of content and normally represents a larger group of people asking the exact same question. Examples of these questions for agents might be, should we use staging? Why is marketing important, and what does the process look like? For a builder or developer, it might be around how long stages take, material decisions, consents. And for a mortgage advisor, it might be around how much can I borrow with my current deposit amount, how does KiwiSaver work, and should I fix or float my mortgage? The content doesn't have to be revolutionary. It just has to remove uncertainty. So if a client has already asked you the question, it's already a relevant piece of content. Number 2 is problems. Problems create relatability and tension and are awesome for education. This type of content is great for focusing on helping other people out and sharing your opinion and becoming that thought leader. But remember, do it without criticizing, because we want to show up with solutions, not problems. For this type of content, the structure that we want to use is what is the issue, why it matters, and then what is the solve? What is the resolution? You don't need to point at people and tell them what they're doing wrong. Instead, you can just describe the problem, give the solution, and the helpful next steps. And number 3 is decisions. Explaining the expertise and the thinking behind something that you have done. This shows that you are a thought leader, but also gives people an understanding as to how you connect the dots in your brain. This is often the piece of content that people leave on the table, but is the easiest to make. For example, if we pull from our questions type of content into decisions, a lot of this is when clients ask you, why do you do this or why do you do that? That can fall into decision-based content. The reason we do this is a lot of people will post the results, the journey, but fail to mention the thinking behind things, which leads to judgment as to why we've done things in certain ways. Whereas if we understand how you came over a problem by answering a question, we end up with a really good piece of decision-based content. And number 4 is observations. This is kind of like decisions. However, we're now pulling on patterns, trends that we are noticing and pulling from our expertise what the truth is in the market. Observations are what creates a point of view and distinguishes you from your competition and gives you a personal feel to all of your content. Your experience becomes your most valuable asset when it comes to creating content and is the thing that can separate you from your competition. So share those observations that you have noticed over the years. So now that we know where those ideas are coming from, we have to capture them into a system, into a framework, if you will, in order to produce the content. Personally, I never trust myself to remember a piece of content by the end of the day, because our days are long and you're a busy person. So here's exactly what I do. I have a notes app on my phone with a template that I fill out on a daily basis. You could also use a pen and paper, a WhatsApp chat with yourself, or just the voice memo app. For example, this might look like the idea, why presentation matters before Photos Day, who it helps, agents and vendors, format, educational reel or carousel, next steps, record 3 presentation tips. Now that we have our ideas written down, we now need to break these moments into multiple pieces of content, because one moment does not equal one piece of content. I'm going to use the example of an agent at an appraisal, but this works for mortgage brokers and developers and builders as well. From that one appointment, the client might ask, should they renovate? That's a question reel. The agent notices features that buyers often miss. That's observation. And the agent might also explain how they'd position the property within the market. Now that's a decision reel. And of course, the emotional side of preparing a property to get ready for market and how hard it is to clean it all up, well, that is a problem reel. And all those reels could also be turned into carousels or story posts as well. But what you need to remember is you don't need to force every type of content into every moment and idea. Sometimes it might only be 1, sometimes it might be all 4, sometimes it might be 8 if you're doing a reel and carousel of each. But hang on, before you start using this framework and start posting way too much content, you need a filter. Before spending the time, the resources on filming, writing, or designing those carousels, ask yourself these 4 questions. Who is this for? What will they know, feel, or do differently after seeing it? Why am I qualified to talk about it? Is there a clear example that makes it real? If there's no audience or outcome, the idea might be a little bit too vague. However, if you think it does have a place, go ahead, create it, and see what the outcome is. After all, you need to learn what your audience is looking for as well. So let's recap this framework that we've built together today. Your ideas are already hiding in the format of questions, problems, decisions, and observations. You need to capture them as they happen, review it once a week, and then if they have a clear audience or outcome, you should go and create them. So because we're partnered with the property industry here in New Zealand, I'd love for you to try this framework for the next 7 days, write everything down, create pieces of content only if they have a clear audience or an outcome, and if you'd love some feedback, share it with us on Instagram. We'd love to see the content that you've created. We'll see you in the next Spot On episode.